Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Michigan. Oh, Michigan. I wish there was a song I could sing. You wouldn't want to hear it, but I wish there were a song about Michigan that I could sing, because I would do it, and I would do it badly. But good on you, Governor Whitmer. Good on you, the legislature. First time in decades, a state that has enacted the horrible right-to-work legislation designed to destroy wages, designed to worsen working conditions. Finally, a state has repealed it. Good on you, Michigan. And again, Virginia, I wanted you to be the first. You done screwed that up. Next time. Better be next time. This is a big day. This is a big day for working people in this country, because finally the Democratic Party, I think, at least in Michigan, leading the way on how to stand up and fight for working people. This is going to give folks the opportunity to negotiate for better wages, hours, conditions, and yes, better tomorrows. This is good stuff. Also, it wasn't just repealing the no rights at work law and the thing that bothers me about how Michigan did it, like thieves in the night in a lame duck. Again, another reason that I'm against term limits and have been for a very long time. This idea that on their way out the door, people were looking for their next job and voted for this, even though the people of Michigan didn't want this. This was thrust upon them by the moneyed interests who want to do what? Well, crush wages. So good on Governor Whitmer for this. Also, she signed legislation to repeal the ban on prevailing wage. Going to restore prevailing wage laws in the state of Michigan. And look, what's interesting to me, and I don't know why states continue to pursue this. West Virginia, the perfect example. Jim Justice, the Republican Trump governor, he said, look, and you can go look this up. He said, we did what you wanted. We passed that no rights at work thing. We got rid of prevailing wage, and it didn't make anyone's life better. In fact, it made things worse, because that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to create desperation situations for working people. And well, the folks at the very top, the elites, our moneyed interests, well, they're going to do better. By now restoring prevailing wage, that means there's going to be a floor. That means if and this is where I want competition. Understand, at the end of the day, I want competition on the right things. Who does the best job, who does it in the most timely manner, who has the most qualified workforce, who's going to build the widget or whatnot, or school or courthouse, who's going to do it in the most cost-effective way possible, but also to make sure that it doesn't fall down. I don't think that's too much to ask, which is why I want a local building trades, which is why I want local craftspeople to do this stuff. What we know, and we've seen these studies, they've been done for years. When you do away with prevailing wage, what you end up with is transient labor coming through doing shoddy work. And interestingly enough, because Pennsylvania tried this, interestingly enough, the bids don't come down. I know, you would think if you got to cheat your entire workforce out of wages and benefits and you got to do all of this stuff without there being any floor, you would think the cost would come down a little bit. No, that just means the contractors get richer. That's what it means. And I find it interesting because my friends who are anti-prevailing wage, they love to throw out this statistic. If we just had prevailing wage, because this is how they sell this. And for people who don't know, this is the sales tactic. They say, if we got prevailing wage in the state, because they're doing it in Pennsylvania right now, we could save 25%, 30% on a building project. So that, that school that's going to cost, let's say, $1 million to build, that's not going to. We could save 30% of that. Think of how many more schools we could build. This is their argument. And it's on its face. You go, yeah, if you could save 30% more, you could build 30% more school. And, simple-minded folks go, yeah, that's how it goes. Problem is what we know, again, as I've said, the studies are conclusive, that 30% savings, if it were there, and I'm going to tell you in a second that it isn't, it's just going to go into the contractor's pocket. Now, for anyone who knows, to save 30% on a building project, the working people, the people who work for a living, they would have to not only work for free, they would have to pay the contractor, because labor costs are anywhere between 20 and 25% of the cost of a building project. You can look it up. It's right around 25%. So if you're going to save 30, where's that other 5% coming from? Are you going to strong arm the workers for their lunch money? Is that what's coming? They're dishonest in every way, shape, or form. Now, the reality is what they're actually trying to say without saying it. They're just saying, hey, we can save on building projects. What they're actually saying is we're going to screw those workers out of wages. They're going to get less health benefits, less retirement security. We're going to cut corners at every opportunity so that we can save some money. So what they really mean is they're going to cut employees' wages by 25 to 30%. That's what they mean to say. But they don't want to say that out loud, because you'll go, wait a second, that's my job. But again, what we know is states that have strong union density, union workers earn between 18 and 25% higher wages. They have safer working conditions. They're more likely to be covered by health security, health insurance, and some retirement security. Them's the numbers. Them's the facts. And when a state like Michigan back in 2012 wanted to ram that through, what they were saying to their people is, we want you to work for less wages and crummy conditions. Now, Michigan was the 7th highest density state in the country. They had the 7th highest percentage of union members in the state. They have now fallen to 11th, and that was a mission accomplished moment for the moneyed interest. They were able to crush some workers. Now, this hopefully going to bring that back. This is a good step in the right direction. At least I think it is. And the reason I bring this up is there was an article. It's been a couple of days now. Matthew Desmond over at the New York Times wrote a piece called Why Poverty Persists in America. And he went on to explain, his basic premise was this. There are a couple of factors that keep poverty high. One, he writes, is the unrelenting exploitation of the poor. Because in this country, it's extremely expensive to be poor. And he said the other one is the decline of labor unions. Something that I've been talking about, I don't know, for all 18 years I've been doing this show. And as he points out, with unions basically out of the picture, you have corporations who have just obliterated the 20th century. As he writes, corporations have chipped away at the conventional mid-20th century work arrangement, which involved steady employment, opportunities for advancement, and raises and decent pay with some benefits. He basically points out that, look, our parents and our grandparents' generation, they had jobs. Those jobs paid good wages. Those wages gave them the opportunity to buy homes, to save for retirement, to go on vacation, to raise their children, to do all of these things that we pined for. And now what we do is we look at the millennials who are stuck at home, and they've got jobs. They're still stuck at home because they can't find reasonable housing that they can afford and then do all of the other stuff. Honestly, if you got the chance to stay home and save money, do that. But the sad reality is what's happened in this country as labor has been crushed by the big moneyed interests, the ability of the next generation to earn that living that I thought of as a birthright. You go out, you get a job, that job pays you a good wage. You work hard, you play by the rules, you get ahead. That was the calculus right there. Work hard, play by the rules, get ahead. That was it. It was like 2 + 2 = 4. It was that simple. But that's been broken down now that we've got corporate masters and a government. I've had some people tell me, our government's broken. No, our government is not broken. It is functioning perfectly. Washington is functioning perfectly, exactly as it's supposed to, according to our very well-to-do. It can't accomplish anything that you or me or working people want and need. No, And that's by design. But if corporate America wants a tax cut, rich people want a tax cut, mission accomplished. If we need to bail out a bank, mission accomplished. They can do those things, but to ensure that every kid gets fed breakfast and lunch at school, oh, sorry, can't afford that. To ensure that workers have decent wages, hours, conditions, to ensure that there's opportunity for families. No, health care? Oh, heavens forbid, no. Now, what Desmond points out is he said, look, Americans have access to cheap, mass-produced products. And you hear this all the time from the right. Well, America's poor. They're not really poor. They're not. They've got refrigerators. They've got air conditioning. They've got cell phones. Look at them with their cell phones. When the reality is basic necessities in this country are those things. When was the last time you were able to eat your cell phone? When was the last time your cell phone, I don't know, gave you medicine when you were sick? When was the last time your cell phone diagnosed a problem when your kid was sick? All of the things that, and again, I go back to when I was a kid. And back in the 70s was not a great time for a single mother. We struggled. But I go back to that time period and I go, all of the obstacles that we faced are still here, but we just have a couple of little extra luxuries. And still, we're not getting jobs to the people who need it. Now, the thing about what's gone on since the pandemic is wages at the very bottom have gone up, which is interesting to me because you're seeing a lot of those low-wage employers closing up shops saying, no one wants to work. Yeah, no one wants to work for poverty wages. Nobody's going to go back to working for minimum wage 60 hours a week. No one's going to do that. And this is what we need as a country. We need this shakeup. And as Desmond points out in his article, we need stronger labor unions. We need to be able to negotiate for the wealth that's being created because after all, and this is fact, we are still the wealthiest country on this planet at its wealthiest moment in history. And you're going to tell me that we can't get living wage jobs for people? You're going to tell me that we can't ensure that no child goes to bed hungry or no veteran goes to bed on the streets? You're going to tell me we can't solve our problems? No, we choose not to solve our problems. And the people who choose that are the folks at the very top who have all the money right now. The thing is that we, all of us, those of us who have outprocreated them, it's time for us to put down the red hat and the blue hat and come back to somewhere near the sane middle area and start saying, this is what we demand: healthcare, education, opportunity. This is the wheelhouse. All that divisive stuff they throw out to pit us against each other, at some point, we got to put that down. Just my thoughts. Want to hear yours? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I was watching clips of Mike Kelly, Pennsylvania representative, seated on the House Ways and Means Committee, and they were talking to the small business owners about how difficult it is, to keep talented workers because health insurance is so expensive, especially in rural areas. And it struck me that everyone was complaining. No one was talking about, what we should be doing to solve the problem. And again, DC, again, as I said, working exactly as it's supposed to, pointing out all the problems over there, and not really solving them. This health insurance issue could be easily solved. We could do what most other industrialized nations have done, have one big giant insurance pool, one big pot. And I've said before, I don't care if it's public or privately run. One pot that covers you from cradle to grave, where risk, again, any basic insurance, risk assessment is going to tell you the bigger the pool, the less the risk. I was listening to Mike Kelly talk about, how they attempted to lower costs for health insurance for their workers by going to an 80-20 plan because, that's going to lower the cost of it. Then, no, that didn't work. They went to a 70-30, then a 60-40, and then he finally said 50-50, and I'm going, well, why bother? Why not just give like a grocery card and say, hey, good luck at the grocery store. Maybe the pharmacist will give you some advice in aisle 3. And again, I sympathize with small business owners. I do. Insurance costs are way out of control. But we never seem to point our finger where a lot of it happens. We got a lot of CEOs with their hands in the cookie jars. You go, what exactly do you do here? We've got an enormous administrative state that we really don't need. We could put those people to work in other areas in the medical field, like actually caring for people. Every dollar we spend on advertisement, every dollar we spend on paperwork, on shuffling papers around, are dollars that aren't being spent helping people. And it's remarkable to me that, we're still divided on this. Oh, I want my private health care. And then you get sick. And look, I've seen this happen over the years where someone is, paid into their health insurance for decades that never needed it. And then something big happens. And now they're out of work. They're out of work for an extended period of time. And they go, oh, sorry, you're not working anymore. We're not covering you anymore. You can have Cobra. We'll give you this wonderful thing called Cobra, which no one can afford because it's extremely expensive. And now you're out of luck. But I paid all those years. What did I get? You got nothing. Now, look, I'm not even 100% opposed to some of the right-wing ideas of the past. The problem is the Mike Kellys of the world don't have any solutions. It's attack Obamacare. It's all the Affordable Care Act's fault. That's their talking point. No solutions, just pointing out problems. I'm not even against the idea of health savings account. Start at birth, add X amount of dollars into a health savings account, and by the time you get to the end of your life, I'm not even against that idea. They're not even talking about that anymore. That's the thing that's just remarkable to me. So what we have right now, the best we can do right now, is to ensure working people have a voice on the job and can negotiate for a part of the profits that their labor creates, and using some of that to get the best health insurance that they can. And unions do that better than anyone. And again, corporate America understands that, which is why at every turn they attempt to destroy labor unions. And I look at what Florida is doing right now as we speak. Florida is already a no rights at work state. They've been a right to work state for a very long time. And there are unions there, surprisingly. I know, shockingly, workers would want to form and come together. Who knew they would do that? They do in some right to work states, not at the levels that they could and should, because the obstacles are too great. Well, Florida's not happy with having a very low density rate. They want to do away with especially public sector unions. Those teachers, those government employees, those healthcare workers, those sanitation workers, screw them. And what right to work does is it gives you the right to freeload. So you have people who, they want all the benefits. They want the good wages. They want the good health care. They want the negotiated pension. They want the safe working conditions. They want the job security of ending at-will employment. They want all that. They want the representation if they get in trouble, because the unions have to represent them. Even if they're not members, if they get into trouble, because that's the law. What Florida's now doing is saying, you know what? If you don't have 50% plus one membership in your union, we're gonna dissolve it. We're gonna decertify it. It's done. Now think about that for a minute. It's not bad enough that the unions in Florida are struggling and are fairly weak already. What you've got now is them to go even further, because they want to eviscerate it. Because here's the thing. They know once they can get them decertified, getting them back in the door, damn near impossible. And this isn't new. This is something that's been banging around, and it's come back. This is what Republicans, and again, why I say Republicans hate working people. Just look at what they do. I don't care what they say. There's a lot of rhetoric out there about how much they care about working people. I don't believe they do, because I see what they do. Now, in these environments, there's always my hope, because I try to be optimistic in these moments, because ultimately I think back to my grandparents. My grandparents weren't overly politically active, but they were staunch union members. They were heavily active in their unions, because that's where their politic was. Their direct action was fighting in the workforce, fighting on the job for better wages, hours, conditions, for better opportunities. And it's why they were able to go in their lifetime from being homeless, living in their car, because they got married for the old-fashioned reason. They had to. And my grandmother was thrown out of the house because you had to. They were homeless. And because of their work, they were able to raise three children. They were able to buy 2 homes. They were able to retire with dignity and respect. And they died in that home, not wanting, not needing, not relying on anyone, not begging anyone. They lived their life out with respect and dignity. And they led a good life because of those union jobs, because they fought for the stuff. They fought for those wages. They fought for those benefits. And it's how a truck driver and a cashier could earn a solid middle-class living and live in a solid middle-class neighborhood and give their kids opportunities. This is where the foundation of rebuilding, and I say this all the time, we've got to revive the middle class by reshoring manufacturing and reunionizing. We need to reinvest and rebuild. And you do that with decent wages. You do that with good benefits. You do that with opportunity, and you give people the chance, like I said, to work hard, to play by the rules, and yes, to get ahead. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1989. That was the day the Exxon Valdez oil tanker spilled nearly 11 million gallons of oil in Prince William Sound off the coast of Alaska. The ship ran aground and collided with Bly's Reef. Most people remember the captain was held primarily responsible for the spill. By his own admission, he had passed out after a night of heavy drinking. But a number of factors also contributed to the environmental disaster. The National Transportation Safety Board issued its final report over a year later. In it, the board concluded that fatigue, reduced crews, and problems with regulations and procedures regarding Exxon's drug and alcohol program all contributed to the spill. Union officials reported great concern regarding chronic fatigue of its members on merchant ships, reduced crews due to greater automation, and reduced scheduled ship maintenance. Crew members on the Exxon Valdez routinely worked 20 hours or more a day during routine cargo handling operations. The NTSB also concluded that vessel traffic service under the U.S. Coast Guard failed to properly track the Exxon Valdez. They had the ability to select a higher radar scale, but didn't. The Coast Guard suffered from reduced crews burdened with increased job duties as well. They also found that remote communication sites were inoperable on the night of the spill. The equipment was old, deteriorating from harsh weather conditions. Requested funding for new equipment had not been forthcoming. The Alyeska Pipeline Company, for its part, failed to have an oil spill barge loaded and ready to go. Major cleanup efforts were conducted during the spring and summer months through 1992, but marine life and the environments were devastated. Long-term efforts at monitoring and cleanup continue today. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Exciting news, people. Utopia is on the rise. Space Commander Elon Musk has announced that His Magnificence, i.e. him, intends to construct his very own private town on 3,500 acres of farmland near his new Tesla plant southeast of Austin, Texas. More than a town, Musk explains that he will create utopia in Texas, promising an ecological paradise where his Tesla workers can live and do fun things like swimming, pickleball, and paying rent to him. The gabillionaire is certainly rich enough to erect his own Muskopolis, but alas, the Utopia name is already taken. Indeed, I've been to Utopia, Texas, a small town west of San Antonio that was founded in 1855 by, cover your ears, Elon, Swiss socialists. Of course, history shows that a company town is ruled by the company, not by residents, much less socialists. And Musk has made clear at Tesla, Twitter, etc., that his personal whims rule over workers, consumers, our environment, and even truth. Which brings us to that ecological workers' paradise he's promising. Even as one arm of his empire was extolling his vision of a Garden of Eden situated along the beauty of the Colorado River, another arm was scheming to pollute it. Musk is asking Texas corporate control regulators to let him use the site to dump 140,000 gallons a day of his industrial wastewater into the Colorado. Excuse me, but that turns Elon's ecological paradise into a fraud. Worse, it adds up to Musk pouring 50 million gallons a year of his waste into the river, fouling the main water source for dozens of towns and hundreds of farms downstream. This is Jim Hightower saying Musk wants to extend the long sordid history in our country of company town hucksters, and his latest Texas scam is proof that we should never trust a billionaire promising us paradise.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I find it interesting that Marjorie Three Names out there fighting, and good on her, out there at the D.C. jail today, fighting for a more humane prison system, and something that I've been saying for years we should be working on. And good for her finally coming along. I mean, it took a bunch of white criminals to get finally locked up to get someone's attention, and that's okay. Finally, we're here. But the irony isn't lost on me that these are probably the same people that I've sat in lunchrooms with and heard how easy jail is and how it's 3 squares and a cot and how it's cable TV and gym memberships and all this stuff. And now when they finally go and they experience what it's really like, they don't like it. They don't like it at all. And well, maybe this is that moment where we can find some common ground and move forward. Here to share some thoughts on the big day in protest with Marjorie Three Names. I've asked Rachel Eisenberg to come talk with us. Rachel is a senior director of criminal justice reform at the Center for American Progress. You can check out their website, americanprogress.org. Rachel, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me this evening, Rick. Happy to be here.
Do you find it as interesting that I do that you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene out there? This is kind of her champion issue. I know she believes that all of the criminals who were arrested on for their activities on January 6th are all somehow political prisoners and martyrs and all this, who are deliberately being treated poorly. but our prison system's a mess.
I mean, I can definitely agree with you on that last point, Rick. I mean, and I think it's really important for everybody listening to know that, it's not just a few people who are sitting in our jails and prisons across this country. It is, we have over 2 million people incarcerated, and most of the time for nowhere close to as serious of an offense as the people who Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to visit today. Oftentimes it's for, small possession of drugs, or, simple disagreements between neighbors. Is really things where we have this very overbloated system. And, many people have been fighting to find ways to safely reduce the number of people who are locked up in this country, because we know just locking people up without the supports that they need actually makes us less safe.
Yeah. And well, look, as long as we have a for-profit prison system, I don't see any of this stuff going in a positive direction. And until she addresses that, I don't think we go in any different directions. But there's a difference here, isn't there? I mean, she's talking about the D.C. jail. That's one part of this. We've got state and county prisons. We've got federal prisons. We've got all of this hodgepodge of prisonry going on. So talking about certain things, I think I want to talk about apples and apples. But just locking people up in general, we're number one. We are the champions in locking people up, as I understand.
Absolutely. And we lead the world in some of the highest incarceration rates, and that has no bearing on what we see happening in communities when it comes to crime. And I think that there's just a really false sense in people's minds that the more people you lock up, the safer we are. And we, as the United States of America, are a test case, or a proof positive that that's not the case. And what you were saying about apples to apples, so the just to let people know that whenever someone is awaiting trial and they've, it has been deemed that they have to be incarcerated prior to their trial, they're going to be in a jail,
right,
in a local jail. And so the vast majority of people who are in our jails have not been actually found guilty of a crime. And so they're, and that is a system where we, claim that people are innocent until proven guilty.
Now, let me ask you this, because, I've had a whole bunch of people saying, our political martyrs, our political prisoners, every one of the people who are being held because of January 6th and their behavior and their crimes, they've been charged, right? Because I've got people telling me, no, they're holding all of these political prisoners without charges and they don't get to see lawyers and all of this stuff. That, I gotta think that's patently false.
Yeah, I think that what people are responding to is the fact likely that not everyone's trials have happened. So I think that is where people spend time in jail, right, awaiting their trials. Now, I can't speak to each of the individual cases that folks are who are speaking about, but I think oftentimes DAs do take some time to file formal charges, but it's a much longer period of time until the actual trial.
Yeah, no, the reality is they all got their first days in court. I've yet to find anyone who sent me, this is the person who's being held. There's none of that. I believe everyone's been charged. Everyone is waiting, like you said, waiting for trial. In fact, as I've pointed out a number of times here in Pennsylvania, there was a guy, a homeless guy, who stole 3 peppermint patties. The egregious crime of stealing 3 25-cent peppermint patties off the counter of this place. He spent over 500 days awaiting trial. Locked up in jail. 500 days for 3 pieces of candy. And look, there's a lot to be angry about. There's a lot but nobody seemed to be marching and holding rallies for that poor guy.
And what people also aren't asking themselves is, well, why do we have a legal system that is the thing that responds when someone steals 3 peppermint patties? Why are we not trying to address the fact that there may be some underlying cause.
Oh yeah, that's such a bigger discussion down the road. That boom, that just blows everything up, because then we got to talk about how we care for our homeless. We got to care for the hungry, the poor, the sick. That whole Christian nation thing will come up. That's a whole different can of worms. But this is one of those things where you go, our justice system should be about justice. It should be about holding people accountable. It shouldn't be about retribution. It should never be about profit. But this is where we are.
Yes. And, when you have a system that very often, makes very split-second decisions, about who should be held in jail pre-trial with limited information, sometimes these hearings are a couple of minutes. You can't fully assess the person's circumstances, how likely they are to show up in court. And frankly, most people show up in court anyway. And there's just this default that, we have to set, an amount of bail. And if someone can't pay because they're poor, they should be locked up.
It's insane. And the other part of this is a lot of people end up in jail because they don't have a proper legal representation. I mean, I look at our public defenders, and look, I know a couple of them. They do as much as they can, but they're overworked, underpaid, understaffed, all of that stuff. And honestly, you're never going to get the kind of representation that someone who has resources does. So this, again, if Marjorie Taylor Greene really wants to make this an issue, there's a lot here, isn't there?
Absolutely. And in fact, in a lot of places, although, there are some jurisdictions that are trying to change this, people don't have the opportunity to speak to the lawyer before their bail is set. That's just done not even by a judge. And so being able to actually consult with a lawyer, have a robust hearing, fully assess whether someone needs to actually wait however many months in jail before their trial date, those are all reforms that really need to happen.
Now, what I find interesting is I have all of my conservative friends who now this is the first time that they're actually dealing with the judicial system as it is, not as they believe. This is them dealing with the prison system and the jail system as it is, not as they believe. Again, it's not color TVs and gym memberships. The justice system, the same thing. We all grew up reading the Constitution. I still have friends who carry it around in their shirt pocket. I really doubt they've ever opened it, but they've got it. But you have the right to a speedy trial. It's been a while. How long does it take to get a speedy trial? This is, again, if we really wanted to fix the system and deal with the system, this is a part of it as well.
And I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up, because people would be surprised at how long it takes to get through every stage in the process, even before the actual trial date. And that there's no wonder that people who are waiting in jail for their trial date are incentivized to take a plea deal, because they want to get home to their families. They want to get back before they lose their jobs. There's a whole host of really, really significant incentives for people who actually may not have committed any crime to take a plea deal.
Yeah. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Rachel Eisenberg. She's Senior Director of Criminal Justice Reform at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website if you want to check out the work that they do. Now, I see a lot, and again, there's this weird kind of world that we're in. We've got Marjorie doing her song and dance. And then you've got other Republicans who are saying, we're too lenient. We've got these progressive prosecutors out there who are just letting all the criminals run rampant. They're swinging the doors open, letting all the violent criminals. And it's all because of them, Rachel. It's because of these progressive prosecutors that the crime rate is going through the roof. It's their fault. So we've got to rein this in. And in a number of states, they're trying to rein in what prosecutors can do, taking their prosecutorial discretion away, figuring out how to recall and get rid of them. San Francisco, I guess, got rid of one last year. Are these progressive prosecutors, are they responsible for all of this crime that we're told is out there?
I mean, frankly, no. And what you're pointing out is how really persuasive and salient all this fear mongering about progressive prosecutors is. But the data just doesn't bear it out. There, study after study has looked at, the way that crime has changed in jurisdictions with progressive prosecutors, and found that there isn't a connection between the the having a progressive prosecutor and any fluctuation in crime rates. So I also think what people don't understand are the things that progressive prosecutors are doing are not really they're not geared at some people who've committed really violent offenses. What they're geared at is, putting forth new diversion programs for people who may have a substance use disorder. They're geared at looking at wrongful convictions, people who shouldn't have been convicted of the crime that they're sitting in jail for. Yeah. These are really common sense and reforms that enhance justice. And there's just a really strong fear narrative out there about prosecutors that is unfounded.
Oh, no, I hear it all the time. Our cities are burning, Rick. They're crime riddled. You can't go across the street without being mugged or carjacked or robbed and all these horrible things. And look, I've been to all of our major cities just about. Last fall, we did a tour of many of the major cities in the Midwest. I didn't have any problems. I'm not seeing this cities burning. And I know that narrative is something they have to play into. But what a lot of these prosecutors are talking about is the guy who sat for 500 days waiting for a trial over 3 pieces of candy, maybe not leave him in jail that long, maybe find him a shelter, maybe find him I don't know, a soup kitchen so he doesn't have to steal I don't know, maybe something else.
And let's be clear, everybody deserves to not only be safe, but feel safe in their community, right? And violence is happening in our cities, not to the degree that you're describing, but there is really, there are issues of crime that need to be addressed. But we have our sights set on all the wrong solutions, right? The solutions to violent crime are in specific interventions that deal with people who are at risk and connecting them to things that we know prevent crime in the first place, like jobs. Like housing, like healthcare, all of that, all of those, like education, all of those solutions exist. We have evidence that back it up, and yet all anybody looks at is, trying to lock up the person for taking 3 peppermint patties.
Yeah, well, we can't do that. That's too expensive, Rachel. All that stuff's too expensive. Too expensive to do this. As I was just telling my son, to lock somebody up, it doesn't cost like $40,000 a year. And wouldn't it be cheaper just to pay them to stay at the Holiday Inn and have room service? I mean, it would almost be cheaper to do that. It's how short-sighted we are, but yet we've got profit margins to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of financial interests baked into the criminal legal system. It's not just the prison industry. It's the commercial bail industry. It's everybody who makes money off of when people are incarcerated to pay for their phone calls or for their commissary accounts. Like there's a whole host of corporations that profit off of people being in the legal system. That is very difficult to untangle, but is really a very perverse motivator for keeping the system the way it is.
Yeah, well, one person's misfortune is another person's fortune, I guess. So, I understand April is just around the corner. It is, as I understand, a month where we're going to be looking at, how people who have been incarcerated can re-enter society, the things that we should be doing. It's kind of like an awareness month. We got awareness months for everything. This sounds like a pretty decent one. And especially since Marjorie Three Names this is now her issue, and I call on her to participate in this. How do we ensure that people who are coming out of prison or jails and have the opportunity to get jobs, housing, opportunities to not end up, recidivism is high. How do we change that?
Sure, and we're very. It's very important to recognize that criminal justice reform is not just sort of at the front door of the jail, but also that the vast majority of people who are incarcerated eventually come home, and they come home to their neighborhoods and their communities, and it's on everyone to ensure that we break down the barriers that make it very difficult for people to restart their lives from all of the ways which people with criminal records are excluded from employment, who are excluded from housing, who have difficult time accessing healthcare, and all of that can start from while someone is still incarcerated. So there's lots of innovation happening around trying to actually get people access to healthcare before they leave custody, to train people in the jobs of the labor market today, to connect people to the healthcare they're going to need when they go home, and to find actual stable housing for people before they leave jail. All of that is incredibly important and is necessary if we're going to ensure that people who are coming home can get their lives back on track.
Are you hopeful as I am? Because there's part of me, I look at what happened on January 6th and I say it was a horrible event. It's tragic for our country. It was destructive for our country. It was divisive. If there is something positive that can come out of it, is all of these people who have been arrested for their crimes have gone through a system that isn't user friendly, and everybody tells me don't get in the system because once you're in, your life is never your own. Do you hope as they come out, as more awareness comes, that maybe some of these changes happen when the people who were joking about it just being color TV and gym memberships realize it's not Club Med, realize that this is real detrimental to lives and a cumbersome system? Do you hope then that maybe some things change? Now, I know I've had people say, Donald Trump reformed prison. It's not working. It didn't work.
I do think that there, and when we've done some research on this too, that there's actually, the public is really has a growing recognition that the things that are going to make our communities safer, the things that are going to make it so that fewer people are locked in jail, are the things that you said are too expensive, are the housing, are the healthcare, is the education. And so if our lawmakers could follow suit and actually put the money behind the things that are going to make a difference, I would have hope for it.
There you go. Rachel, I appreciate the time. As always, good stuff. Thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you so much.
Rachel Eisenberg, she's the Senior Director of Criminal Justice Reform there at the Center for American Progress. Check out their website, americanprogress.org. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the birthday of Dorothy Height, a civil rights leader and a champion for black women domestic workers. Domestic workers had largely been left out of the labor protections passed as part of the New Deal. Dorothy had grown up seeing firsthand how this exclusion impacted the women who cleaned homes and did other domestic work. Dorothy was born in Richmond, Virginia. Her mother was a nurse in a black hospital, but when the family relocated to Pennsylvania, her mother could not find work as a nurse. Like many black women who moved north during this time period, Dorothy's mother took a job as a domestic worker. She worked long hours for low wages. As Dorothy became involved in civil rights organizing, she remembered the experiences of her mother. In 1957, she was elected president of the National Council of Negro Women. From that position, she became a leader in the effort to improve working conditions for domestic workers. She became one of the leaders of the National Committee on Household Employment. This committee brought together representatives from 23 organizations concerned about domestic labor. Dorothy explained the urgency of the effort, stating, "Let's treat household employment as a profession in which workers have a contract and are assured fair hours and compensation, as well as coverage by our protective labor laws." Today, labor organizers are still fighting to win fair working conditions for domestic workers. Grassroots organizing has led states like New York and California to pass a Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights. Similar efforts are underway in other states to give workers the dignity and the respect that they earn. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I saw this story out of Minnesota. There's a nuclear plant there that evidently is leaking what they're calling low-level radioactive material. They're saying it's leaking from a pipe for the second time. And what's interesting to me, and look, I'm not a scientist. Anytime I hear leaking nuclear plant, being so close to 3 Mile Island, the mind goes, who knows? But evidently, this Xcel Energy, the people who run the nuke plant, discovered back in November that they were leaking about 400,000 gallons of water contaminated with this tritium, I guess. They didn't report. They reported it, but nobody bothered to tell the people around them. And this is one of those things you go, well, regulators and local politicians shouldn't. I know you don't want to cause mass panic, but just a thought. Well, evidently they just found out it was leaking again, and as the story said, it was a few hundred gallons. I'm going. It was 400,000 back in November. Why now are you reporting it when it was hundreds of gallons more of this stuff? Now they've shut it down, and this could be. It's one of those things that it could be just out of extreme caution. Hey, there's something dripping, something leaking. We gotta figure this out. Or it could be they have no idea how bad things are. Because here's the kicker: this plant was built in 1971. This pipe, evidently, is original. It's original, and you go, aren't you supposed to be swapping that stuff out from time to time? Doesn't this stuff corrode? And this is the other part. You go, okay, so they shut down after a few hundred. This is when they decide to tell people after a few hundred. When it was 400,000, it was all hush hush. I come back to going. It seems a little hanky to me. Seems a little weird that they would choose now, but this is what they've done. And look, this could be just, like I said, out of extreme caution. Now, as I understand, the area around this is, well, a Republican stronghold. You would think they would be the people. No, never mind. They're the folks who are going to, we don't need to regulate nothing. We don't, corporations are going to do what's in their interest. Yeah, never mind. Sorry I even thought about that for a second. Now, the kicker for me is evidently they were going to shut down for a planned shutdown on April 15th, which isn't too far down the road, which makes, again, maybe I'm just overthinking this. You got pipes that are over 50 years old. You've got, this leak that was evidently much worse back in November, now leaking again. You could have if it's just a little leak, only a couple hundred gallons, you could probably figure out how to eke through to PM, and good on them for not. But the fact that this close, they decided to shut it down, that, I'll tell you, that makes me curious. Now, what's interesting is this Xcel has applied for a license to operate that facility in Monticello through 2050. So you're adding another 27 years onto this. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about it, going, it was built in 1971. That's a long time. I mean, 79 years of operation, if it makes it to 2050, that seems a bit excessive. Maybe it's just me. If you have thoughts on this, I got to know. Am I overreacting? Considering it's fairly close to the Mississippi River, it could lots of questions here. If you've got answers, I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
The energy equivalent of 600,000 Hiroshima bombs per day are being stored in the ocean, believe it or not.
World oceans hit highest temperatures ever recorded.
We just keep waiting for things to get better, and they seem to just be getting worse.
Entire West Coast salmon fishery closed due to relentless drought. Plus,
our country's natural treasures define our identity as a nation.
President Biden protects public lands and waters with new national monuments.
All of that good and bad news straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The new UN report warns the climate time bomb is ticking and the world is running out of time to avoid catastrophe.
We are nowhere close to making that Paris Agreement goal. To accomplish all of it, developed and the richest nations in the world would need to reach net zero by 2040. That is going to be nearly impossible.
Wow, that's awful. But I guess a shout out to my baby boomers. Feels like we got the last chopper out of Saigon, doesn't it?
Yep, this is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, good to see Al Franken doing comedy again.
Yes, it is.
What do you have for us today?
Well, first, on the heels of a bracing new UN climate report warning the world is moving too slowly to avoid catastrophic global warming, now a new study warns of a looming global water crisis.
Great.
And imminent risk of shortages. The study, published by UNESCO on the eve of a crucial UN water summit, finds that, quote, water scarcity is becoming endemic because of overconsumption, overdevelopment, and pollution, and warns that global warming will increase seasonal water shortages everywhere, even in areas with abundant water. The report projects that by 2030, global freshwater demand will outstrip supply by 40% and urges an overhaul of wasteful water practices around the world.
That's a problem.
A different study this week finds that the world's oceans have hit the highest temperatures ever recorded, part of a steady warming trend since 1980. Earth's oceans absorb about 90% of the excess heat generated by humanity's burning of fossil fuels, hitting a new ocean heat record this early in the year, combined with a warming El Nino climate pattern forecast for later this year, will have widespread consequences, warns Florida meteorologist Jeff Berardelli.
More extreme weather, spikes in rainfall because of the extra energy, hurricanes, and the heat index numbers as well, and more intense red tide and blue-green algae, as well as a loss of tropical coral reefs. So the bottom line is, if we want to deal with these problems, we have to combat climate change.
Oh, man, you guys are killing me. Literally.
Officials in the Australian outback face a logistical nightmare in cleaning up a massive, stinky fish kill on the Darling River in New South Wales.
Not so darling now, is it?
Torrential rains swept agricultural fertilizer runoff into rivers. The nutrient pollution, combined with record-shattering heat waves, caused an algae bloom that used up all of the oxygen in the river, suffocating as many as 20 million fish.
We really do suck.
In California, despite a string of punishing winter storms, the western drought has had a delayed effect on salmon populations. Federal fisheries managers have canceled the entire 2023 ocean salmon fishing season along the entire West Coast from Oregon to Mexico in an effort to protect fish populations that dramatically dwindled during the ongoing drought.
Now, how did the drought hurt the salmon in the ocean?
Because salmon spawn in the rivers, and the drought prevented them from spawning, causing the population to crash.
Got it.
But some good news. President Biden has issued the first veto of his presidency, rejecting a bill brought by congressional Republicans trying to ban the ESG investment framework that allows investment managers to consider factors such as climate change, environment, and social impacts in long-term investment decisions for pension plans. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, but Republicans mainly objected to the environmental part of the voluntary guidelines, fearing it disadvantages fossil fuels. Pension managers are still required to seek the best returns for their clients.
Actually, they just objected to it because ESG rhymes with CRT, and they got to run against something this year.
Finally, Biden this week also protected large swaths of American wilderness from development, designating new national monuments in Nevada and Texas and a new marine monument in U.S. waters near Hawaii. In Nevada's Mojave Desert, the new Avi Kwame National Monument will protect sacred Native American lands, ancient Joshua trees, and rare wildlife. Scientists say such refuges are critical as global warming dramatically reshapes conditions on land and sea. Here's Biden at a White House conservation summit.
We're protecting the heart and the soul of our national pride. We're protecting pieces of history, telling our story that will be told for generations upon generations to come.
Well, so there is that.
Yep.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we didn't have the heart to get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So got an interesting press release from the folks at the Department of Labor. They're saying that the U.S. Department of Labor and Health and Human Services are going to be working together. They've issued this memorandum of agreement, this MOU, that I got to tell you, it's about damn time. They are going to be monitoring child labor violations across the country. You would think we'd already be doing this. You'd think the states would be doing that. But sadly, what we're seeing is a lot of states are loosening their child labor requirements. Now the Fed is saying, look, through the Wage and Hour Division and Health and Human Services Departments for children and families, they've signed this agreement to formalize a partnership between the agencies and outline procedures that the agencies are going to follow so that they can get out there and share information, deepen their information sharing, coordination, training, and education. This is at least a step in the right direction, because this is the feds admitting states are doing a horrible job of this. This is a problem. And here to share some thoughts on maybe just how big of a problem this is, I've asked Jess Piper to come talk with us. Jess is the executive director for Blue Missouri. She's also a former state house candidate in Missouri. Rural mom, also fighting for public schools, podcaster. You can check out her podcast, Dirt Road Democrat, hosted by the Heartland Pod. Jess, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So what do you make of this? I mean, I think this is finally a good step. You've got the feds going, look, maybe we can't trust the states. Maybe the states are going crazy. We've got to start maybe stepping up our game. I think this is a pretty good, at least a good step.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice. We're going to need somebody to step in. You've got states like Arkansas and Iowa, rolling back child labor laws and letting kids go into, really dangerous situations and different places and work. But you know what? If you look back a couple of years, Donald Trump put Betsy DeVos in charge of the Department of Education, obviously to dismantle it. But they tried to roll the Department of Labor and the Department of Education into the same department. I don't know, people kind of forgot that part, but this has been a thing for a while.
No, it's about training, like George Carlin used to say, training obedient workers. People are just smart enough to push the buttons and shuffle the papers, but not smart enough to realize how badly they're getting screwed over. And this is one of those things. Now, I'm surprised, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm surprised at how many people aren't as freaked out by these child labor changes as I am. I guess I've spent too much time reading labor history and knowing where we've come from. Are you freaked out by the direction that we're going?
Yeah, they're doing it while they're simultaneously defunding schools. They're in places like where I am. I live in a town of 480 people. They'll defund our schools until there's no school left. Betsy DeVos, again, she said it with her own mouth. She said that they envisioned rural schools closing. That there would be no brick and mortar schools for kids like mine, that they could listen to ebooks work in a field and hopefully try to find an apprenticeship at, a John Deere dealership. This is purposeful. Iowa says, and that kids can go to work as early as 14 in the meatpacking industry, logging industry, and construction industry. 14 years old. I mean, it's bad.
And the worst part that I read about this, and I don't know if you saw this as well, but as long as there's an apprenticeship between an employer and a school, the employer has a liability shield. They're not responsible if the kid gets hurt. To me, that's enormous.
Yeah, there's no liability if they're hurt or killed on the job. So yeah, what they're doing is, right in front of our eyes. I know you said you had talked to somebody about it earlier, but we don't have to have tinfoil hats to see what's going on. If you defund education and you roll back child labor laws, it's right in front of you.
But the message that I keep getting from people is, that's not going to be your kids. And it's not going to be my kids. I'm fortunate enough to have resources that I don't have to send my kids out into the workforce to be able to keep a roof over our head or food on the table. We know who this is aimed at, I think.
It was aimed at kids like me. I got a job. Well, I started working when I was 12 babysitting. I got my first real job at 16 at Piggly Wiggly. And it wasn't to pay for a new car. It was to help my mom buy groceries. And what happened is that I was smart enough, obviously to go to college, but I was paying for it for myself and I couldn't pay for the first semester. So I ended up, I had already been working for 2 years. Why not just keep, working as a cashier? And I think it creates that, the George Carlin, the worker bees, because you're just used to working, and why not just keep going?
Yeah, but I'm not like I said. My first job was at 8 years old. I delivered the newspaper. 9 years old, I had 2 paper routes, a morning and an evening. We all had those kind of jobs. And but they weren't in factories. They weren't on the kill floor. We weren't putting kids back into logging and construction. Because I think having a job is a good thing for kids to learn a little bit of responsibility, but I don't want that to be the sole focus of their childhood. And I fear we're heading back in this direction, and that's what really concerns me.
The Washington Post did a story a couple of weeks ago, and they were very blunt about it. They said in this market, when people are unwilling to pay a living wage or to raise wages or to give people benefits, the next best, place to find your workers is children.
Yep.
And it's what's happening.
No, we need cheap labor, and they're cutting off immigration, so
Yep.
It's got to be the kids.
Yeah.
And again, it's all happening right in front of us. And you, as a former teacher, you've watched what's happened to public education. Especially in rural communities, as you said, the destruction there is to get everyone into cyber charters. And in my state of Pennsylvania, cyber charters are horrible. I mean, just abysmal failures. And yet there's still money going into them, tons of money, because you know what? We can make them better eventually.
Well, the thing with education, and I'm really going to speak about Missouri here for a second, but it applies to almost every single red state because our legislators don't write their own bills. They get them from ALEC, just like Iowa and Texas and Florida. They're all the same. That's why everybody sees the same exact freaking thing happening, right, is because they're not writing their own bills. But we're 49th in educational funding, 50th in teacher pay. A starting teacher in Missouri can make as like 27 grand is what they can start at. They keep saying they're going to raise it. It's all smoke and mirrors, but it's purposeful. And everyone needs to understand that the Missouri GOP has been in charge for 20 years. They're the ones who defunded school. They're the ones to make sure that teachers were leaving because they want to privatize the schools, because they want to point to, terrible test scores and say, see, look, these schools suck and your kids shouldn't be in there. And here's a voucher. Well, I tell you, Rick, and anybody in rural America, you can give us 20 vouchers. It doesn't mean anything. There is absolutely nowhere to send my kid. The nearest public school is 20 miles after the one. The nearest private school is an hour away. We can't use vouchers. Vouchers in Missouri, 2/3 of people who receive vouchers, because we passed a voucher scheme, 2/3 of those people already had their kids in private schools. So it's just poor and lower class people, earners that are sending our money to higher and richer, wealthier communities.
No, I mean, but that's, again, I keep coming back to, our political system isn't broken. It's operating exactly the way the wealthy want it to operate. It's Washington's operating exactly the way it operates. You know, your state house in Missouri, same thing. In Harrisburg, same thing. It's operating exactly the way it's intended. More for the very well-to-do, and well, the rest of us, you know, we get to fight over crumbs. But education, and this is one of these things where, you know, we should be fighting this fight on, you know, right, left, center. It shouldn't matter. If you take education away from children, especially working class kids, there's nowhere for them to go but down. And I'm struck by how easy it has been to divide parents on nonsense issues and get them to almost voluntarily destroy their own schools because someone else might be doing something. It's insane to me at how easy it has been. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, they've already taught folks how to ask for less for their children. They have taught them they only need to learn to read, to write, and to do math, which is a third grade education, right? They have told them that indoctrination is happening, that they're reading pornographic, books, that teachers are, pushing their agenda onto children, which we know happens every decade, every single decade. This culture war, and I hesitate to call it that because it is harmful to people. It's not just a culture war; it harms real people. But this comes up over and over again, going back from the 50s with Milton Friedman, the 70s with the moral majority, and the 80s with Reagan, and it just never stops. And they have already trained people to ask for less, and now people are doing it. They're showing up at Board of Education meetings and losing their ever-loving minds over something that's not even there. CRT is not a thing. It's not taught, K through 12. What does woke mean? I don't even know what that means. And DEI, you're worried that we might recruit Black teachers? Like, the whole thing is nonsense, but it gets folks riled up.
A perfect example, and just how far things have gotten out of control. I was reading a story out of Florida. Yes, Florida. And my favorite line of this story, because evidently parents were upset about Michelangelo's sculpture, David. I'm sure you've seen this story.
Yes.
Because, they saw the naked David, which we've all seen, and all of us kind of chuckled and moved along. My favorite line from the entire story was, and maybe you'll catch it too, Tallahassee Classical, it's the name of the charter school, a Hillsdale curriculum school is required to teach about Renaissance art in 6th grade. Did you catch the part that I find comical in there?
Renaissance art?
No, Hillsdale
College. Yeah.
Hillsdale College's curriculum. A right-wing school that teaches how to do right-wing radio and all kinds of right-wing extreme curriculum, takes no federal money because they don't want to have to do anything that we the people want. They are privately funded so they can be as crazy as they want to be. They are influencing charter schools with their curriculum, and that's not even crazy enough.
Right. No, I know. Everything is just imploding, and it's all because, privatization pushes this. But when you come down to it, the reason, and folks ask this all the time, why are they doing this? Why are they going after it? So in Missouri, we give away billion-dollar tax cuts, and then we decide we're not going to fund Medicaid. And there are so many issues. Our schools are defunded. Our hospitals are closing. I can go out and pick out a piece of pavement off of my highway and bring it into my house if I wanted to. The point is, the GOP has been in charge for 20 years, and they can't say what they've done. They can't be honest with citizens and say, this is on us. So they have to create this insane war, right? They have to go after teaching David because they have no policies and they have nothing that real people want to vote for.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. The sculpture of David, they say, was done sometime between 1501 and 1504. And here we are, 2023. And now people are upset about it. It's just crazy to me. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Jess Piper. She's the executive director for Blue Missouri. She's also a former state rep candidate in the state of Missouri, rural mom fighting for public schools, which I love. Make sure you check out her podcast, Dirt Road Democrat, hosted by the Heartland Pod. We'll get links on social media how you can take a look at that. But here's where I want to focus a little bit of time on, because the reality is they're winning. You said Republicans won't take credit for the things that they've done. You're right. They have created the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization, and they've done that off the backs of workers. They've done that off the backs of students. They've done that off the back of college students who they've saddled with a lifetime of student loan debt, and yet they're not taking credit for it, and I think we should give them credit for it.
I give them credit for it every day. I mean, I am the most hated person, according to the Missouri GOP. Like, they hate my guts. They roast me every day. But I can't be silent. I ran and I lost. I got 1 in 4 in my my community, which was kind of a gut punch. But then when I think, 1 in 4, and when I go to Walmart and Hy-Vee, and these people voted for someone who talked about, abortion, who talked about the fact that everyone deserves health care, who talked about the fact that, you should get 2 years of free college and daycare for free. So I did talk to a lot of people, and you hear this a lot, Rick. You'll hear people say, oh, those people are just hicks, they vote against their self-interest. But I need your audience to know something. 40% of the seats, House seats last year in Missouri went uncontested. So I'd like to know how these people can freaking vote in their self-interest when there's not a candidate, right? Yeah. They don't have a choice. So until we come together and get our acts together and make sure that people have someone to vote for, nothing changes. We're chasing our tails.
No, and that's a perfect point. And the fact that we've stopped talking to rural communities. We did a multi-state road tour back before the election, and we went from Pennsylvania out to Iowa and through Wisconsin and Michigan and all over, and specifically going to rural communities and talking to rural voters. And you know what miraculously we found out? Their interests are the same. They're the same as in urban areas. They want good jobs. They want safe neighborhoods. They want good schools. They want health care. The problem is we've been pitted against each other, the rurals and the urbans. Just like any other way they can slice and dice us: male, female, black, white, blue collar, white collar, green collar, ring around the collar. They'll figure out a way to divide us, and we let them all the time. And that's the part that drives me insane.
Yeah. And you hear people say that Democrats have left rural areas of America. Well, guess who else has? The Republicans. I've never had a Republican knock on my door or call and ask me for their vote. I don't see them anywhere in my town. There's not only Democrats left, everybody left. Everybody said it is what it is. Y'all are on your own, and so until we do better, we can't. And I know most states are like this. Missouri's 1/3 rural. You can't move the state anywhere if you're not taking rural Missouri with you. And you only do that with candidates. You only do that by sending, money to them, making sure that they're funded. Even if it's in a race that's going to take 3 cycles to win, it's still worth it. You said yourself, the Republicans have been playing the long game since the 50s. They got SCOTUS now. They've had a long time to get this together. And Democrats need to stop being desperate and making knee-jerk decisions, right? We need a long game.
I got to tell you, I love you. Democrats out there, I hope you're listening, and I hope you'll check out the podcast, Dirt Road Democrat. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that, hosted by the Heartland Pod. Jess Piper, I appreciate you taking time for us. You got to come back and talk with us again.
Anytime, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Jess is the executive director of Blue Missouri. Make sure you check out the podcast. Good stuff. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Saturday, big rally down in Waco, Texas, evidently. Number 45, the former president, is having a little shindig down in Waco. And you go, gee, why would you be choosing Waco? Oh, yeah, this is the 30th anniversary of Waco. This is the 30th anniversary of all of the craziness that sprung out of that. And, you know, as I was thinking about the whole David Koresh thing and, you know, the FBI, you know, the ATF and the FBI and all of the right-wing insanity that went on, you know, Timothy McVeigh popped into my head because he was in Waco giving his little spiels about government overreach. And then, of course, you know, he did, you know, blow up a little building in Oklahoma City, if you remember the Murrah building. Interestingly enough, they found him, you know, with the Turner Diaries by his side, you know, the Bible of the right-wing racist. My mind went to this place, and I think this is just not me. Basically, all of the mainstream media going, what? What's Trump doing? Running around, you know, calling, you know, the Manhattan District Attorney human scum, you know, saying that there's going to be potential death and destruction. He is outwardly saying, and this is the weird thing, and you know, I said this from the beginning. I said it was masterful how he turned the power dynamic in this indictment situation. I really don't think it's going to be anytime soon before someone indicts, because I think they're all waiting for somebody else to go first, because they don't want the wrath of the MAGA world to come down on them. And they want to do it on their timetable. And what Trump did masterfully, because he had the power to do it, is he set the timetable. Now, he was going, they're going to indict me on Tuesday, and they weren't ready to indict him on Tuesday. You know, there was a leak, and I'm going, who was the leak, Donald? Was it John Barron? Did John Barron whisper in your ear? For those who don't know, John Barron is Trump's alter ego. Trump used to call people as John Barron and say, John Barron, here, you know, Donald Trump would like to speak with you. Please hold. And he would be his own secretary under the name of John Barron. So I'm assuming John Barron whispered in his ear and said, you know, they're coming for you. And this gave him the ability to say, no, I'm going to set the term. And look, I give him credit. The guy's not dumb. He's got everybody on their heels at this moment. And he knows that his base, some of them are off the beaten path. Got me thinking, you know, by doing this stuff, you know, what are you setting up? I mean, today you had a white powder sent to this Alvin Bragg's office. That was with I forget what the message was. You're going to die, or we're going to kill you, or something like that. Alvin, I'm going to kill you was the message. And you go, this is a former president stoking this kind of anger. Now, we still don't have a former president who's been indicted yet, but we got one that wants violence in the streets. He is threatening. He's threatening the district attorney. If you charge me with the crime that someone else went to jail for on my behalf, there will be bloodshed. And he's doing it in Waco during the 30th anniversary of the Branch Davidian debacle, the siege, if you will. That's planned. Doing this on purpose, hoping. I'm not gonna beat around the bush anymore. This guy wants chaos. I think it was Chris Christie who said that he thrives in chaos, thrives in turmoil, because he keeps getting people to say his name. It keeps him in the news. And the question I keep coming back to, when will we stop? And I don't want, this is one of those things that someone said, do you want him indicted? I said, if he's a criminal and he and there's evidence, yeah, I want him indicted. I want him held accountable. But I think it should be after 2024. I think he should be beaten soundly at the polls when people say, no, we don't want this kind of person with this kind of behavior sitting in the most powerful chair on this planet. Someone who can't even complete a sentence. Have you listened to him speak? They rail about Joe Biden. And even I say Joe Biden can't get a sentence out. But you know what? Neither can Trump. Guy speaks in half sentence fragments. And even those are sometimes unintelligible. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the birthday of Dorothy Height, a civil rights leader and a champion for black women domestic workers. Domestic workers had largely been left out of the labor protections passed as part of the New Deal. Dorothy had grown up seeing firsthand how this exclusion impacted the women who cleaned homes and did other domestic work. Dorothy was born in Richmond, Virginia. Her mother was a nurse in a black hospital. But when the family relocated to Pennsylvania, her mother could not find work as a nurse. Like many black women who moved north during this time period, Dorothy's mother took a job as a domestic worker. She worked long hours for low wages. As Dorothy became involved in civil rights organizing, she remembered the experiences of her mother. In 1957, she was elected president of the National Council of Negro Women. From that position, she became a leader in the effort to improve working conditions for domestic workers. She became one of the leaders of the National Committee on Household Employment. This committee brought together representatives from 23 organizations concerned about domestic labor. Dorothy explained the urgency of the effort, stating, "Let's treat household employment as a profession in which workers have a contract and are assured fair hours and compensation, as well as coverage by our protective labor laws." Today, labor organizers are still fighting to win fair working conditions for domestic workers. Grassroots organizing has led states like New York and California to pass a Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights. Similar efforts are underway in other states to give workers the dignity and the respect that they earn. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Exciting news, people. Utopia is on the rise. Space Commander Elon Musk has announced that His Magnificence, i.e. him, intends to construct his very own private town on 3,500 acres of farmland near his new Tesla plant southeast of Austin, Texas. More than a town, Musk explains that he will create utopia in Texas, promising an ecological paradise where his Tesla workers can live and do fun things like swimming, pickleball, and paying rent to him. The gabillionaire is certainly rich enough to erect his own Muskopolis, but alas, the Utopia name is already taken. Indeed, I've been to Utopia, Texas, a small town west of San Antonio that was founded in 1855 by, cover your ears, Elon, Swiss socialists. Of course, history shows that a company town is ruled by the company, not by residents, much less socialists. And Musk has made clear at Tesla, Twitter, etc., that his personal whims rule over workers, consumers, our environment, and even truth. Which brings us to that ecological workers' paradise he's promising. Even as one arm of his empire was extolling his vision of a Garden of Eden situated along the beauty of the Colorado River, another arm was scheming to pollute it. Musk is asking Texas corporate control regulators to let him use the site to dump 140,000 gallons a day of his industrial wastewater into the Colorado. Excuse me, but that turns Elon's ecological paradise into a fraud. Worse, it adds up to Musk pouring 50 million gallons a year of his waste into the river, fouling the main water source for dozens of towns and hundreds of farms downstream. This is Jim Hightower saying Musk wants to extend the long sordid history in our country of company town hucksters, and his latest Texas scam is proof that we should never trust a billionaire promising us paradise.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Quote of the day from George Conway. He says he is absolutely putting on the old shtick of trying to get as much attention as possible and trying to raise money off of it. But the matter of the fact is he is terrified. He's talking about Donald Trump. And I don't know that I absolutely agree. I think he loves the fact that he's the center of attention again. We're going to have this big rally in Waco, going to call for some violence. It could be great. We could have another January 6th, only with explosives. If all plays out, I mean, why else would you be taking to Waco, Texas to have your big coming out? I've lots of questions here. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on where we are, where we're going. I've asked our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So what do you make of this? What's your thoughts on the Waco rally, and any thoughts on that as a location?
Well, I mean, Waco, I still don't understand how people gravitate towards, that the Waco people were okay. So that's not even in my realm of thinking. As far as the timing, I don't know whether Trump was trying to allude to the fact that, such as the deaths that occurred at Waco, such things would occur, if he's indicted. But his verbiage, even for Trump, the use of death and destruction, even for Trump, goes a little bit towards the overboard. I mean, he's overboard
a little bit,
naturally,
Bob?
but it goes more.
I'd say it goes more. I don't think we've ever had a former president who's threatened this kind of stuff, have we?
Not that I can recall. I haven't. We haven't had presidents that have rejected the results of the elections. We haven't had that till now. But I think with Trump, what's interesting to me, Rick, is if people, and I don't personally believe there's going to be wide-scale destruction, wide-scale burning of things. I really don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think it's going to be wide scale. I agree with you. I don't see people marching down the street, but I do fear, because if you think about Waco and what came out of Waco, Timothy McVeigh was in Waco, was interviewed in Waco, and then he went on to do what he did. For me, there's always that diminished capacity out there, if you will. That person who's just who's hearing it on a different wavelength, that's going to go and do something that I think is really dangerous.
Well, I mean, look, it's possible. I saw some clips today of people that are attacked for absolutely no reason. It's almost an execution on the streets, and it's not for robbery purposes, And so there's all kinds of people out there that, a spark or sometimes not a spark will, do things, and they get motivated. On this one, I would hope that he understands that he really doesn't want something to happen. He shouldn't, because that will not help. It will not help him. But I think his statements that have, again, even for Trump, went overboard, I think are because George Conway's got a point. Because I think, as tough as he is, and nothing bothers him, and he says whatever he wants about whoever he wants, I think he is actually afraid of what is coming down in New York and potentially anywhere else, including Georgia. So I think that's got to be out there for him. I really do.
No, I mean, they say you can't fight a war on two sides. He's fighting it from all four sides. I mean, the walls are literally closing in. You've got the New York thing. You've got this thing. You've got what happened on January 6th. A judge has now ordered that his aides, Mark Meadow and others, other top, former aides, are going to have to testify. That's a pretty big freaking deal, I think.
Well, it is, and once people start rolling over, it goes like a domino effect too. I know that for a fact. That's what happens in a lot of these cases. But with Trump, before this all started to come down about the district attorney in Manhattan, and by the way, them summoning the two that, quit the DA's office, I don't think that's going to do the House Republicans any good, by the way. Yeah. I really don't. They quit because the DA wasn't acting, fast enough on it. But I think that with Trump, prior to this, he was really starting to go down. He really was. People were getting soft. He shouldn't run, etc. He's had a semi-burst now of, DeSantis dropping in the polls and him rising in the polls. But I want to note, Rick, this is temporary. This is sort of we kind of wanted him to not run again, but now we got to rally around him. This will wear off. This will wear off.
Do you think so?
Yes, I think it. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be base of people supporting, but this is going to go back after a while to the point where it's not about the economy, it's not about education, it's not about inflation. It's about Donald Trump, and do we save him? And can Donald Trump beat the system? I mean, there's more to the country than can Donald Trump beat the system.
No, it's an excellent point. But, I look at this and there's part of me that goes, I don't know that he's not going away. The fact of the matter is on Monday, I understand he's going to be making his comeback to Fox News. I guess Hannity's going to have to do the knee work, because he's coming back. I guess it's time to kiss and make up. And like I said, Hannity's going to be the one doing the knee work. But they're going to start embracing him again, I think.
Oh, yeah. But before all of this is kind of the maybe not legal side of the DA's move, but this is kind of the sad political side because, frankly, before this, Trump was seriously beginning to take a back seat, and a lot of people. I know I talked to some of the same people because see how their opinions change, and they went from rabid Trump supporters to still liking him but thinking he shouldn't run. And I've called these same people this week. What do you think? Oh, he's got to be. We've got to defend him. They're picking on him. So he got a second burst from this.
Yeah. Will that last as things come out, do you think? I mean, especially when you look at, the January 6th stuff, or
I don't
do you think that
lasts.
narrative's already been spent?
I really don't. I don't think it lasts because eventually, if this remains all about Trump, whether he beats this case, whether he beats that case, eventually people do have needs in their lives, and if it's just all about him, it will become old for a lot of people. And then, of course, there's always if he gets through a primary, which, I've still argued he won't run in the end, but if he gets through a primary, then it's the general election. I looked at the numbers on 538 today for Biden and Trump, and they actually mimic each other in their numbers.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because you're right. At the end of the day, people are still going to need stuff. But my mind goes back to, and part of the thinking I think that might be in Trump's world is people love John Gotti. The Teflon Don kept beating, was able to beat back the system. He was able to beat back the man. There's part of me that goes, there are some who love that.
Well, like I was saying earlier, and I really feel firmly about this, that right now the people that were thinking, okay, sit back, be the party maker, the king maker, do this, do that, and let somebody else run. And then all of a sudden it was, they're picking on him. We got to rally around him. It's a shame what they're doing to him. They're going to destroy the country, on and on and on. And all of a sudden he got a burst. He got a burst.
Yeah. Well,
and I still think eventually it will diminish. And if he gets wrapped up in one more case, which I do agree with the theory, somebody's waiting on somebody else to do something first.
No, I think that's what it's going to be there, and then the floodgates open. But we'll see. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst. I want to get your thoughts on this story coming out of North Korea. Evidently, they're claiming that they've got a radioactive tsunami weapon. Now, they can't feed, evidently 42% of the population of North Korea is what was it? Help me here. They're suffering from malnutrition, malnourished. But they've got the ability to come up with a radioactive tsunami gun. Are you buying this?
He's crazy, Kim Jong-un, and he fires things that fall into the sea, and he threatens all the time. And now he is testing this nuclear-capable underwater drone, and it's going to generate a gigantic radioactive tsunami. It'll destroy ports, and I don't buy it. He's dangerous. He's insane, but I'm not buying this. I think if he ever gets that close to somebody, not within his own country, because he is starving his people to death. And of course, they still have to idolize him. Somebody's going to drop something right in the middle of his house.
Yeah. No, and it's probably going to be the Chinese. That's where my mind goes, because at some point, you got to go, just stop it.
Yeah. Look, we dealt with his father. I supported Bill Clinton when I think we were going to spend $2 billion some dollars, which I thought was worth it to keep his dad, who was a psycho, at bay. We tried that, and then we tried, Bush tried a different tactic in Obama, and Trump, frankly, was starting to get somewhere. And if he shakes his hand and keeps him calm, I was all for that too. Just like I was if we spent money under Clinton.
Yeah.
But I think it's just come to the point with him. If the intel shows these things are credible, somebody is going to finally say, okay, that's it. And the other dangerous part for us is this: if we become over anxious about curing this problem with Kim Jong-un, what do we have to do, Rick? We have to go to China and ask them to do it. And if we ask China to do it, we're gonna get screwed over in trade issues.
Yep.
So I think we can't be the lone savior on this to decide what happens with Kim Jong-un.
No, let his own people take him out. At some point, they gotta rise up and take him out. If they just have to at some point. That's just my thought. I brought up China. What do you think of this meeting between Xi Jinping and Putin? And look, Ted Cruz out there saying that the reason this is happening is because Joe Biden's so weak. Any thoughts?
No, this meeting has absolutely nothing to do with Joe Biden. I don't care what Ted Cruz has said. If you look at when Xi cemented himself a few months ago, he had his unprecedented third term, right? Kind of the most powerful guy since Mao, except he's not having a cultural revolution, but he's consolidated his power, kicked a few people out. Jiang Zemin passed away. He was kind of a living prominent figure, so put Xi right up the top. Since that time he did that, and I don't know how many months ago, maybe was that 5 or 6 months ago, I forget, but I was researching this the other day, and in some of the documentation in the articles, he has since that time visited 25 heads of state. 25. There was a delegation from Puerto Rico talking to China. Xi is making direct contacts to Honduras. Columbus, Ohio school systems got $30,000 from China to teach English in the schools, which I didn't know that was the second language of Columbus, Ohio. And so you see all these things happening, and this is just about him and China and trying to make he and China on the world stage.
Yep.
This isn't even aimed at Biden. This is about what direction he wants to take China.
No, this is all about influence peddling. And look, I've been arguing for the last 6 years. Trump didn't do us any favors by leaving international relations just in the wind, giving China the ability to fill that void. Look, I was thrilled with the tariffs.
They just did a deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia. We all thought that was impossible. China walked in and did it. And not that Iran is a nice government, but China had the ability to get Iran and Saudi Arabia together, and China's going to do more of that. And they establish these economic development entities, and they do it with different countries. They do it with Cuba. They do it with, India, Brazil, and the United States. Half the time, we get angry at a country for something, so we won't even talk to them.
Yeah. No, it's we're heading for an interesting time. I mean,
we are.
The fact that evidently today, China, how'd they put this? Issued a threat of severe consequences if our warship enters this disputed area in the South China Sea. The Paracel Islands, evidently, that they believe are theirs, and bad things could happen. And this is just, again, them trying to flex their muscles in ways that haven't happened before. So you could have Ted Cruz going, see, it's all Joe Biden's fault, when the reality is this has been building for years.
Oh, years. Ever since China got permanent trade status, it laughed all the way to the bank. It plotted out. It flooded into cheap products. Once we didn't make those products anymore because the cheap products were bought by everybody, then they made the prices rise. They brought in lead toys. And what did Congress do after that? They penalized the American toy manufacturers, not China. It's just historic. But even beyond us, China has been, you're right, they've been making these moves for 25 years, very planned, very methodical, aggressive when they need to be. They back off when they need to be. Most of it was economic with other countries. Now you're seeing the diplomatic side. You don't go meeting 25 heads of state in a short period of time as the premier of China unless you've got a plan.
Yep. No, and that plan is target us.
Oh, you know what they want. That the standard for the world is not going to be the dollar. It's going to be the yen.
Yep. No, and look, we again, those 4 years of leaving diplomacy to the wind. This is part of that. Just my thought. Last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on. There's an Iranian drone evidently killed a U.S. worker in Syria. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, these are drones, and it's in this case it's pretty mixed up in the sense that it's not directly something dispatched from Tehran. It's something they know about. I don't think it was something that was aimed at us because they're even more angry at us today than they were last week. It's a touchy part of the world. Now, the unfortunate thing for the world is that Russia and Iran in Syria is probably part of the reason there's not an ISIS flag above Damascus, and you have to throw Assad in there. So we have a mixed bag problem over there. There's surrogates for the Iranians. There's these militia people that they're sort of the stand-ins for the Iranians. So if they take a drone and go after us, or we go after them, then we're going after Iran. Iran's going after us. So some of this is what I call surrogate policy, just like Yemen. The war in Yemen is surrogate puppets for Iran and Saudi Arabia. So I don't think this is anywhere near. It's tragic somebody's killed, but I don't think it's anywhere near a rocket attack from an Iranian, and we are going to then, do some type of war move. Right. We will hit them back in Syria, is what we will do.
Well, we'll see how this plays out. But Bob, as always, I appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bob Name. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1974. It was the final day of a groundbreaking gathering of more than 3,000 women union members in Chicago to found the Coalition of Labor Union Women, or CLUW. The union women had come together for the purpose of increasing their voice in the labor movement. Women from 58 unions and 41 states joined the conference. Nearly 2,000 of the attendees were rank-and-file members. For many of them, The Chicago gathering was their first major labor conference. They heard a keynote address by Addie Wyatt. Addie Wyatt was the first African-American woman to hold a top office in an American labor union. She was elected vice president of her meatpacking local in 1953. Addie's speech inspired the women. They chose her to serve as the first CLU vice president. They selected Olga Mader as president of CLU. Olga had entered the United Auto Workers Union at the Ford Willow Run bomber plant during World War II. She became the first woman to serve on the UAW executive board. With these two seasoned labor activists at the helm, CLU became an important force in U.S. labor. The women attending the founding convention agreed on 4 key goals. First was to promote affirmative action in the workplace. Second was to strengthen the role of women in unions. Third, to organize the unorganized women. And their final objective was to increase the involvement of women in the political and legislative process. Since its founding, CLU has supported efforts for pay equality, parental leave, and childcare. Today, CLU continues to encourage and mentor future women labor leaders and works to involve more women in the political process. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So I got an email during the break from Mary, who doesn't believe me that parents lost their mind in Florida over the Michelangelo sculpture, David. And like I said, this thing's been around since, 1501, somewhere between 1501 and 1504. So we're talking over 500 years. This thing's been around, and now you got Florida parents all upset, all angry. It's pornography. And yet these are the same people who would want to, put the Bible in every school, which, interestingly enough, and this is one of the things that just kind of I've been waiting for. A parent in Utah actually read the Bible and says, "Look, it's got porn, it's got all kinds of stuff. It's you name the." It's got incest, it's got porn, it's got prostitution, it's got bestiality, it's got you name. There's a lot of things there I can't say on the radio. There's a lot of stuff that the FCC would not allow me to say. And the weird thing is there's, again, lots of sex. Not much in the way of sex ed, but lots in the way of really creepy kind of stuff. I mean, the Old Testament, really, wow. Seriously, wow. And it's one of these things where you go, if we're going to have a real conversation about what books should and shouldn't be in school, maybe we could talk about this one. Because I've read it. When I was in school, I read it. For instance, I posted, a couple of things on Twitter saying, if you read this, if your child read this, would you be upset? And a lot of people, yeah, this should be. I'm going, well, that's the Bible. No, it's not there. And you give them the verse, this is where we are. So I find it interesting that we're heading down this path, and it's going to get ugly. It's going to get uglier before it gets any better, as we've seen in the past. The question I have is, when will sane, rational minds come back together and stop this extremism? I mean, religion is another one of these things that's tearing us apart into the polar opposite fields. For instance, I had a guy at the gym today, tell me that he was thrilled that the Pope is a Jesuit and that I should read the Jesuit oath, and that, you'll be happy because the Jesuit oath, he's on our side. And I'm not quite even sure what that meant or what his assumptions were, but he felt the need to tell me that the Pope was a Jesuit and the Jesuit oath, and that's going to go, and you read this, and it means they're going to go kill the Protestants. So when the Protestants get their end times, these people are going to, it's crazy. And I keep coming back to, I thought religion was supposed to help us be better people, connect spiritually with a higher power, be better people. I keep coming back to that. Be better people, be a better version of ourselves instead of the worst version of ourselves. But very interesting to see how this is all going and where we're heading, sadly, as a country, as we literally eat each other. We'll see. I want to hear your thoughts, though, even crazy ones. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you get the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people